Hello and welcome to Reese Teaches Programming, and thanks for joining me on another one of these videos talking about testing and DevOps. So if you've been following along so far, we've gotten through all of our testing content. We talked about so many different types of testing and QA, and now we are ready to start digging into more specific DevOps topics, starting with build automation. So if you're new to software development, or maybe you're just new to a DevOps environment, and you've never heard of build automation before, this is the video for you. So let's start with, what is build automation? And really, this is the process of automatic compilation, running our tests, preparing our software for deployment, going through those pipeline steps that we've talked about through all the testing, different types of testing that we've talked about. So instead of manually running commands every time a change is made, the automation will handle it for you. And this reduces our human error and brings consistency and speed and reliability to our software delivery pipeline. Remember, we never want to leave these things into the hands of our developers. We want to make sure that our tests and all of the steps of our pipeline are running every time. So some key reasons. Why do we use build automation? Well, really, manual builds are slow. They're inconsistent, they're prone to mistakes. We have developers waiting on manual builds. We have to make sure that the build process is set up correctly on everybody's computer. But with automation, we can save time because we set this up once they push to that build automation pipeline. We can enforce quality standards, and we make sure everyone on the team is producing those repeatable, high-quality builds every single time. So build automation also allows us to scale more easily. As the project grows and more contributors come on board, you don't have to do that independent setup on their computer. You don't have to make sure everyone has all of the build steps set up in their compiler correctly. You have one pipeline that you maintain, and that's what everyone uses. So what actually happens during build automation? What is it that we're doing? Well, first, our code is compiled into our binaries or our executables. Then tests are run to make sure everything works for all of the different testing types that you've built into your pipeline. Artifacts are then generated. So these could be DLLs, NuGet packages, Docker images, zipped builds. It just depends on your environment, what it is that you're generating. Then builds include our static code analysis, our versioning, our packaging steps. We build all of that into the pipeline. And then each of these steps can be written into a script that's triggered automatically. So as things move through the pipeline, you can see this is where things passed, this is where things failed, this is the steps that we're taking, and maintain each step as needed. So how does this work? The typical flow, if you've not seen this before, the developer would push their code to a version control system, something like GitHub, Azure DevOps Server, whatever it is that you're using. The build server or your pipeline detects the change to the code and kicks off the steps that you've programmed in. So those build steps define what happens next. We compile, we run tests, we package the app, we do all the things that we've programmed into the pipeline. The system executes those steps automatically, and then the results at the end, either we deploy directly, or we pass to testing, or we pass to staging. It just depends on our environment, what we want to do next, that next step in our build automation. So this is the approach that fits like most models of when people say they're using DevOps or they're using CI/CD pipelines. This is what they're talking about. These are the things that they're doing. So just like all of the other things that we've talked about in DevOps so far, we have a lot of tools. So there's a lot of different tools available for build automation depending on your tech stack. So you may have heard of Maven or Gradle before for Java projects. .NET has MS Build. JavaScript has NPM or Yarn. Our Linux users, Unix users have Make. And then maybe if you've ever worked on a large, like really large enterprise project, you would have heard of Bazel. So a lot of times for our CI/CD pipelines, the tools that we're using are really platform dependent. If you're on GitHub, you're going to be using GitHub Actions. If you're on Azure DevOps, you're going to be using Azure Pipelines. And so these tools, really, the point here is to make automation customizable and then repeatable for any team or project. So we always keep things moving, and it's not optional. So I harp on this all the time. It's not optional. It's really foundational. The whole point of going through this process and setting up a build pipeline is that we want these steps to run every time, and we want to know and stop where problems occur. So we want to know, hey, it's passed all of these tests, but not this one in particular, or it passed all of the tests, but it didn't pass this packaging step. So when we work on our build automation, which we're talking about this right now because we're walking towards the steps of you being able to set this up for yourself, one of the first steps that you do in like setting up continuous integration or continuous delivery is making sure that we know what steps we actually want, right? We want to make sure we are working with clean and tested version of our software. So we start thinking about what is it that we want in our pipeline? What tests are important? Do we have a staging environment? We start to build a plan. And then once we have that plan, we can set up, and this is an example of using build automation with GitHub Actions, we can start to set up that script, which for GitHub Actions is in YAML, Y-A-M-L, right? YAML. It's a file in your repo that defines when and how to run your build process. So once you have defined, so what is the trigger? On any push or pull request, we want to run the actions. We want to do the pipeline. And then we first run through restore. We want to, if this is a C# project, running things like .NET restore to make sure all of our dependencies are there. We have all of the updated packages. And, then we're running a build. So maybe we're, again, C# project running .NET build. And then every time someone pushes code or opens a pull request, it's then going to run our tests. So .NET test, and then any of our tests in the pipeline will be executed. And then we'll have an output step that shows us if our project is ready for deployment, if it's successful. And so GitHub Actions, in this case, handles setting up the environment for running the steps and reporting the results right in your GitHub UI, so that this isn't like an extra thing that you have to use or learn how to do. When you type in your command line and push, and then it's going to run all these steps. It's fast and it's reliable and it's fully integrated into your workflow, which if you are maybe more on the management side and you're trying to get all of your developers on board with new DevOps processes, that's one of the key selling points. Developers, they already are kind of burdened with learning a lot of new tools, learning a lot of new technologies, keeping on top of their language functions, doing that professional development. When we're trying to sell people on something new, being able to tell them it's fully integrated into your workflow, you do not have to have another program or package manager or something installed, and it's going to just be another command line action you're going to take anyway, that makes selling this really easy. So let's wrap up by talking about a few key takeaways on our build automation. So build automation, critical for modern DevOps practices, is really the foundational point, right? We want to automate all of these steps. It saves time, it reduces errors, and it standardizes your process. And when you're using those CI/CD pipelines, we're really unlocking the speed and reliability that we want in our releases. And then it makes our team more productive. We have fewer manual steps, we have less rework, and we have greater confidence in what it is that we are producing. So thank you so much for sticking with me. throughout all of this content. If you are just learning this, maybe you've never touched DevOps before, this can be a lot to take in. So make sure you're taking some time to think about all of these new terms, maybe research things that you've not heard before. We're going to be getting into lab work soon and setting these things up on your own. And I really want you to understand why it is that we're doing this, but also there's a lot of moving parts. And so as you get into the lab, this will help you understand, why is it that we're doing the things that we're doing. So make sure to add any questions to the comments below. Always happy to help, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.